Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, and my name is Kathy Haig, and I'm here to um, do my share with you my five top tips for growing tomatoes. Tomatoes are a big food group for people all over the world, and especially in North America. It's one of the most popular foods around, and of course, it's in everything. And I hope this helps you out. I'd love to hear your comments below. My goal with these videos is to help you start getting connected with the earth again and learning to grow some of your own stuff, which everybody should know a little bit about. It's an art and a magic that we have lost, and I really think that we would all be better people if we could take that time to just go back and connect to the earth and Mother Nature a little bit here and there. And even if it's just a few pots or plants in the house, it's a start, and it really changes our living space for us and our mental health, I believe. So starting out, now I like to take notes and stuff because I always remind myself of things as I'm doing Facebook Lives. So my five top tips for growing tomatoes. And we'll start with number one, which is picking the right type of seeds for your climate and the gardening zone that you live in. Seeds evolve. All seeds, all genetics evolve over time they have that ability according to their environment. So, for example, my father-in-law, years and years ago, when his wife is from Thailand, my mother-in-law, and he had brought back Thai chilies and the seeds, and he's grown them every year in the greenhouse. Now, they're not crossed with anything else. They never have been, but they have evolved into longer and more hardy. They tend to do a little differently because the weather here where we live on the coast is much cooler and damper, and the seasons are just different than what they are in Thailand. Over there, of course, it being much hotter and much more humid, the seasons are just different, and so they've evolved a little bit differently. Tomatoes and anything else are the same. So what I do, for example, because we live on the coast and our summers are often cooler, and there's just there can be a lot of rain. It can get really hot, but we have in British Columbia here a place called West Coast Seeds that has for decades now, I think, collected seeds and trials, crossbreeding them for some really good hybrids, but even the heirlooms, evolving them so that they do much better here with the types of temperatures and cooler weather that we have. So pretty much everything that I grow comes from there or similar places. Vessie's is a really good one. It's over on the East Coast, and they tend to have some pretty damp cool weather as well. It wouldn't make sense for me to go ordering, other than maybe just for fun, seeds from a place that is hot and dry and desert-like, for example, that thrives in the Okanagan, or maybe down in California and Los Angeles, where the weather is completely different, and they probably wouldn't do as well. So if take a look at where you live and look for Google's such a great friend with this. Google heirloom seed catalogs near me, and it should bring up a list of places that in your area or your state or wherever it is that you live that specializes in organic and heirloom seeds that they've been doing for a long time, and therefore the chances of them doing better in your area are a lot greater. Now, when it comes to tomatoes in general, though, they like warmer, hotter weather, and they need a lot of light. They tend to be kind of princesses that way. So even with the seeds that I get here, I probably wouldn't be able to grow them outside most of the time. I know people that do here, and it's always hit and miss. If you get a wet, rainy summer, their plants all rot outside, and because they just can't handle it. They do need some warmth. So I grow in the greenhouse because I can control that environment a little bit better. Wherever it is that you're living, You need to figure out what your areas or what your seeds are that you're going to do. Are you going to be growing in pots? Are you going to be growing in hanging baskets? Maybe you're just in an apartment or you got a little balcony and you just don't want anything that big. Picking the right type of seeds for your climate and space is really important. And of course, you're welcome to ask me any questions you like on this if you're not sure. Number 2 is the soil that you use. Tomatoes like a nice light soil, and while it needs to be amended, with some compost and stuff, you don't want to go too heavy on like composted manures. They're very touchy when it comes to nitrogen. It's very essential for them to bloom and set fruit, but it's not quite the same as with other vegetables like your cole crops. Cole crops, for example, are like your cabbages and broccoli and that sort of thing. And they're heavy feeders. You can dig in a lot of compost and they just thrive in it. Tomatoes need some, and I always dig some into my garden and greenhouse every spring. But I don't overdo it on the compost in there. What I do, or what you want to do, is make sure and get a fertilizer, whether you're going organic or whether you're getting commercial. Get one that's specifically for tomatoes, because it will have the exact mix of nutrients that's needed, and use it according to directions. Now I get one from West Coast Seeds. It's a good tomato and vegetable fertilizer, and I put a scoop in underneath the plants because it's a slow releasing and it works really well. But you need to figure out what it is. But get one that's good for tomatoes. Don't just get a general all blooming fertilizer. And that's actually number 3 is the fertilizer. I kind of segged the two. But as far as the soil goes, it should also be quite warm. If you're planting outside, you might want to, a week before you end up planting out there, if you're able to do that, cover with black plastic. See, make sure the ground heats up a little. So that covers 2 and 3 more or less. Now here's a really, really big one for number 4. And this should be your whole garden. I don't care where you live. There's ways to make it happen. Mulching. Mulching covers your watering and weeding issues. Mulching is something that is easy to do. Everybody, I'm sure, has, and I don't care if you're growing in pots. Mulch your pots. Put some newspaper or cardboard down. It will help greatly control your water evaporation. And you're not watering as often. It controls most of your weeding. And it reduces those fluctuations in moisture that tomatoes have a hard time with. When you have fluctuations in moisture that are too much and they're drying out, and then you're watering them because they've dried out, you end up with either issues like blossom end rot, because it can't absorb the calcium that it needs. You'll have people say, oh, they need more calcium. Chances are, if you've given them the proper fertilizer and you have good soil, you have exactly the calcium that you need, but it has to do with how they can absorb it. If they get too dried out, they can't absorb it properly, and so you end up with blossom end rot. Making sure that your water moisture content is much more even is going to eliminate that. The other thing that happens too, like if you're overcompensating with watering, you got fluctuations in moisture, is that you end up with cracked fruit. Okay, they get too much water because you're trying to make sure that they get enough. Maybe you can't be there to water, regularly, depending on what you're doing, and so you end up with cracked fruit. Mulching, and which is another topic, and I'll do more. I'll do a video on that alone sometime. But you can use newspaper and cardboard. Use the dull kind. Top it with grass clippings or leaves or some compost, whatever it is. But it's going to save you so much time and energy in these areas, and it's going to be much better for your plants. It's going to be much better for your plants. Now, number 5 is your location and lighting. Make sure things like your tomatoes and peppers need a lot of light and heat and warmth. So you're looking minimum, just to get going, you should have minimum 8 to 10 hours of like good bright sunlight. If not, you're going to want to look at adapting with your sunlight or sunshine and daylight coming in the window, you're going to want to adapt it with a simple and inexpensive light, a broad spectrum light. You can just get inexpensive ones at your hardware store. You can get them off Amazon. I've seen them anywhere from 25 to 50 bucks. Okay, you don't have to go for a big, great big grow up. Something simple, preferably with a timer on it that you can supplement your daylight with. So maybe if you're not getting that much sunshine, you're only getting 6 or 7 hours, you can adjust it with another 4 with the lamp. I hope that makes sense. But it's super, super important. If you don't have that, you are not going to get fruit off your plants if they even bloom. They have to have that warmth and daylight. And as a bonus, I'm going to add in a bonus one here, a bonus quiz topic, almost like a number 6. But plan on, depending on the types of tomatoes that you're growing. Okay, some really important terms are determinate versus indeterminate. Okay, and your determinate plants are ones that have a set production period. They only grow to a certain height. They're usually more bushy type. You still want to stake them up to keep the fruit off the ground. Granted, it depends on where you live. I know people who live in really hot, dry climates that just let theirs grow, and it doesn't matter. The plants do great, and they grow into a jungle. I'm telling you, tomatoes are crazy that way. They put shoots out of every Y in the branch. You'll have a shoot come out, and they just grow into a jungle. And if you live where it's hot and dry, then you don't have problems like with fruit rot and fusarium wilt virus and all that sort of stuff, because it just doesn't take hold. Here, if you're living in any kind of cooler weather, cooler nights, or you have space, like I have to grow mine in a greenhouse. If I let mine grow into a jungle, I wouldn't even be able to get into harvest, and they would just all be covered with mold and mildew viruses, and it would just be, it would not be worth it. And so staking them, taking and putting, I have the greenhouse built so that there's permanent stakes, and I just put one plant in and I stake them up. And while I let 2 or 3 extra shoots grow up for each plant from near the bottom, I prune the extras off, and it puts extra, my plants do better. The fruit that comes does way better. Because it has more energy to put into it, especially with the weather that we have here. But it keeps the circulation flowing better, so I don't have, problems with diseases and stuff that come with the damper climates. And I can actually see to harvest. I can see what's coming up. I can get to the back row and see what's going on. So whatever works for you. I mean, if you live in a place where you can just let your tomatoes grow free in the backyard or on a heap out back, that's great. But not most people aren't so lucky. You need to have it a little bit more controlled. And this is for your indeterminates, by the way. When you're shopping for seeds or when you're getting plants, you're going to see those 2 terms, determinates versus indeterminates. So going back to the indeterminates, what you're going to get is a very specific time period, and this is great if you're planning on, you want to do like a Roma type tomato, which is like a paste. It's an Italian paste tomato. It's great for making sauces and paste. So maybe you're planning on having a couple weeks off in August. You're going to take and can and process all this stuff, and then you're done. You pull up the plants, you're finished for the year, and you don't have to worry about it. Your indeterminates grow into vines, and these are the ones that really go crazy, and you kind of want to keep under control if you're in any sort of constrained space. And once they start producing, they will keep producing until it gets too cold for them to actually keep on anymore. So decide what you need for your space and what you want. Now, in the indeterminates, the vines, you can get either as cherry tomatoes, you can get big beefsteaks, you can get ones that are more uniform, and you'll see labels for different ones. The ones that are more uniform especially tend to be much easier for canning and processing, just because they fit into the mouths of the jars better. I love beef steaks. You do spend a little more time cutting them and fitting them into jars. It just depends on what you're doing and what you want to do. But of course, there's nothing like a big beef steak with one slab of tomato for a giant sandwich. Um, we had some really big ones that we grew here this year that we hadn't grown before. I'll post a picture below after when I post this so you can take a look. And I mean, they were growing 2-pound steaks and beef steak tomatoes. You know, like they were the size of my hand. They were so good. But not everybody wants those, and you know, whatever you choose to do with yours, of course, is perfectly fine. I don't know. There's a lot more to tomatoes, but these are the basics. You know, pick ones that work for where you live. You know, look for seed companies that are where you are. Look for local seed exchanges, even people that do this locally. Make sure that you have good lighting, heat and warmth, and that your nutrition and watering is, you know, steady and even in what you need for tomatoes. And you are welcome to post questions for me anytime. I will do my best to help you out. And of course, there will be more gardening tips, and I look forward to talking with each of you. Bye for now.